The United Nations Hall was filled with the usual grand speeches. Representatives from the most powerful nations stood tall, their voices echoing across the chamber, each word heavy with politics, pride, and polished rhetoric. They spoke of nuclear power, global dominance, and strategies that seemed unreachable for smaller nations. And as always, when the Philippines was mentioned, it was in passing. A footnote. A country often overlooked, its voice drowned in the noise of louder, wealthier, and stronger nations. Delegates whispered, "What can they possibly say that would matter here?" That day, a quiet buzz filled the room when a Filipino representative was called to the podium. Few paid attention at first. Some barely raised their heads from their papers, convinced it would be another routine statement, a polite, predictable speech that no one would remember 5 minutes later. But the person who walked onto that stage was not what they expected. He didn't wear the traditional Western suit. Instead, he stood tall in a barong Tagalog, his presence striking against the sea of dark suits. His steps were calm but firm, carrying the weight of a nation often underestimated. When he placed his notes on the podium, the room didn't fall silent out of respect. It fell silent out of curiosity. There was something in the way he stood, something in his gaze, unshaken, almost defiant, that told the audience this would not be an ordinary speech. The first words left his lips, and the hall froze. His voice was not trembling, not hesitant, but clear and commanding. He did not begin with apologies or small acknowledgements. Instead, he spoke with conviction, his words piercing through the layers of indifference.
We must stand together for our future, for our children, for the very soul of this nation. This is our moment.
In a world that often measures strength by the size of armies and the weight of wealth, you have forgotten the power of resilience. You have forgotten the voice of the people who fight not with weapons, but with unyielding spirit. Today, you will hear that voice. The delegates who had ignored him now leaned forward. Heads turned. Pens stopped moving. For the first time in years, the Philippines had the floor, and the world was listening. And as his next words prepared to strike deeper than anyone expected, the air in the chamber shifted like the calm before a storm. Words rolled out like waves, crashing against the walls of the grand hall. The Filipino representative spoke not of missiles, not of weapons, not of empires, but of people. He painted vivid pictures with his voice. Farmers working under the heat of the sun, fishermen rising before dawn, overseas workers enduring loneliness just to send money back home. These were the heroes he brought to the world stage, voices that had long been silenced by power and politics. As he spoke, something remarkable happened. Delegates who once dismissed him now found themselves unable to look away. The power of his words was not in aggression, but in truth. He was not asking for sympathy. He was demanding recognition. The strength of a nation, he declared, his voice echoing, is not measured by how loudly it can threaten war. The strength of a nation is in how deeply its people endure, how far they will sacrifice, and how fiercely they will hope. The chamber grew heavy with silence. Even the representatives of the world's most powerful countries lowered their eyes, as though confronted with something they had long ignored. It wasn't just a speech anymore. It was a mirror, showing the world what true resilience looked like.
Did you hear about the new policy changes?
No, what happens?
They're quite significant.
Somewhere in the crowd, a delegate from a European nation whispered, "I have never heard a Filipino speak like this." Another leaned closer and admitted, "Neither have I. And I think we've underestimated them." The Filipino's words cut deeper. He began speaking of disasters, the typhoons that had shattered homes, the floods that had drowned cities, the earthquakes that shook the ground beneath their feet. Yet, through every storm, he reminded them, Filipinos always stood back up, always rebuilt, always smiled through the pain.
Our resilience is our strength. We will rebuild. We will overcome.
It was no longer just a statement, it was a challenge to the world to rethink what it meant to be strong. And as he reached for his next words, the tension in the chamber thickened because everyone realized he wasn't finished yet. The Filipino representative paused, letting the silence grow heavy. Every eye in the chamber was fixed on him now. The nations that once dismissed his presence were leaning forward, waiting for his next words. And then he struck. We are a nation battered by storms, shaken by earthquakes, scarred by history. Yet here we stand. Every time we are pushed down, we rise again. Every time the world forgets us, we remind them that we are still here. And every time someone calls us weak, we prove them wrong. Not with weapons, but with courage, with faith, and with an unbreakable spirit. The words rang out, sharp and unrelenting. He was no longer speaking only for his people.
And so, with hope in our hearts, we look to a future of unity and peace for all nations.
He was speaking for every small nation that had ever been ignored, every voice that had ever been drowned out. And in that moment, the Philippines became more than a name on the list. It became a symbol. Some delegates began to clap softly, hesitant at first. But soon, the sound grew louder.
Thank you very much.
The chamber, usually bound by formality and restraint, was breaking into applause. For the first time in years, the Philippines had not just spoken, it had shaken the walls of the United Nations. The representative raised his head, his final words sealing the moment. The world has enough voices that boast of power. What it needs are voices that remind us of humanity. And today, that voice is Filipino. The applause thundered. Some stood. Others wiped tears they hadn't expected. And in that instant, the United Nations learned something it would never forget. That even the smallest nations can carry the loudest truths.